weekend, a top contenders fight at middleweight. We have the number one ranked Robert Whittaker, the former champion, the Reaper, taking on the Italian Dream, Marvin Vettori, your second ranked middleweight. A couple of guys with squeaky clean records of late, and their last respective losses to Israel Adesanya for the belt. This is each man's respective first 3-round fight since 2020. I have no idea why this isn't a 5-round fight coming up this weekend, Matt. It makes no sense. These two guys are workhorses. They get it done. They really do make the most of those 5 rounds. And for Whittaker, his last 3-round fight was against Jared Cannonier, where he broke Cannonier's arm very quickly with a leg kick. For Marvin Vettori, his last 3-round fight...
Broke his arm with a leg kick. Broke his arm with a head kick.
Head kick, and he went to block it with his arm. My apologies. For Vettori, his last 3-round fight was against old foe Carl Robertson, and he might go, well, yeah, Robertson's way worse than Jared Cannonier, and I agree with you. But that was a big-time rivalry fight. Robertson couldn't make the weight. They argued in hotel lobbies. And then in that one, Robertson decided, I'm just going to forget everything that I'm good at and go for just everything. He threw the kitchen sink at him. Vettori ended up finishing him in the first round. I love this matchup stylistically, Matt, because I think both guys are going to meet, and we're going to get a really, really good contest out of this. I think the fans over in Paris at the Accor Arena are in for a treat. What do you make of this matchup coming up this weekend?
These guys are meeting at a really weird stage of their career, because for Marvin Vettori, he beat a lot of guys he should have beat on his way to a title run, but the weird thing was, I would argue Vettori looked way better against Adesanya than Robert Whittaker did. And I know there's this weird storyline out there where people are like, hey, Robert Whittaker looked good in the second fight. I don't agree with that whatsoever, and I might get some flack, because there were genuinely people who thought Whittaker won that second fight against Adesanya. I didn't think it was close at all. He got dropped early. He wasn't really able to land much offense throughout the fight. Adesanya was always able to just keep him on the end of his jab, really stay out of range of a lot of the power shots of Whittaker. Whittaker landed a couple good strikes, but it's not like he fought him like Kelvin Gastelum did, where Adesanya was on the brink of defeat. And for Vettori, they fight in very different manners, of course, but still, Vettori really never got hit by any big power shots. He used a lot of clinch control, wasn't able to get a lot of his own striking off, but it's not like Marvin Vettori got dropped 6 times against Adesanya, and the first time around they fought to a split decision, so it's not like there's that big of a separation between the two of them. The weird thing, though, about Vettori is, who are his best wins? They're Jack Hermansson, Kevin Holland, they're guys who, let's be honest, again, Marvin Vettori was well expected to win in the first place, whereas for Robert Whittaker, he's fought Yoel Romero, Darren Till, if anything, he's sort of on the come down from his championship reign, and Marvin Vettori is still very much active in the discussion for the next title shot, or even maybe getting a third fight against Adesanya, which is kind of wild to think about now, but still, if Vettori beats the number 1 ranked fighter in the world, maybe you do him versus Costa number 2 at 185, which was supposed to happen the last time out. It would be a really fun fight, but still, for Vettori, that last fight against Costa it does give me some confidence going into this one against Whittaker, because Vettori was able to deal with a lot of the power shots of Paulo Costa, and I don't think Costa's as technically refined as Robert Whittaker is. Whittaker moves a lot better on his feet, he's got a lot better of a bounce to him, but they both strike in sort of a similar manner. They like to mix their kicks in with their punches, and the fact that Vettori was able to eat some of those big power shots from Costa makes me think that he's going to be able to eat a lot of the power shots from Whittaker in this matchup too. And if Vettori is able to really lean on Whittaker, make him feel the physicality, you have to remember, Robert Whittaker used to fight at 170, and I know he's bulked up to the 185 pound weight class a lot. He is a big middleweight, I would say. Marvin Vettori would have to cut, both of his legs off to make 170? There's no way on planet Earth that Marvin Vettori could ever make that weight class. I know we're talking about a different Robert Whittaker, but still, I do expect Vettori to have some sort of physicality edge over Robert Whittaker in this matchup. And I hate that I'm about to say this, because I think the best version of this is easily fight of the night. If Vettori wants to win, I think he's just going to hold Robert Whittaker up against the cage for 13 minutes. And that's not a sexy path to victory. That's not something that's going to get you a title shot. Look at Merab Dvalishvili versus Jose Aldo. If Merab looked good in that fight, and he got a win, so, what am I to say? But still, he got a win in probably the most boring way you can possibly get one. Look at what happened a week earlier. Marlon Vera knocked out Dominic Cruz with a head kick. Those guys were considered kind of equals going into the previous matchups. I think a lot more people are higher on Marlon Vera right now than they are on Merab, and I think this might be a similar fight to that, where Vettori might eke out a decision win with a lot of clinch control and takedowns, but it might not be good enough for him to really get a title shot over a guy like Paulo Costa, and that's why I could see them having a rematch in the future.
When you look at it for Marvin Vettori's last time out against Paulo Costa, first round Costa, second round Vettori, third round Vettori, fourth round Vettori, fifth round Costa. which was kind of a surprise to a lot of people. It was a very, very good fight. And when you look at it for Vettori, again, the loss to Israel Adesanya, he couldn't do a lot with the clinch. He couldn't really get the takedowns or work them into that fight. He wasn't able to get the win. When you look at it for Robert Whittaker, it is that combination that he goes to the well with in just about all of his fights that find him a ton of success. He can mix in a lot of his shots, but I'm sure the big counter that you're going to get and the big thing out of our commentary, and we'll throw it on over to the YouTube community tab in just a second, is the fact that if Yoel Romero couldn't mix in his wrestling against Robert Whittaker, what makes you think that Marvin Vettori is going to have any success with it?
I don't. That's the other side to this whole thing. Robert Whittaker has some of the best takedown defense of all time. Now, that was an ACL surgery ago, their first fight, but you also have to remember, he fought for 20 minutes against Yoel Romero with a jacked up ACL that got stomped in the first round of their first fight, and he was still able to make it through that and have really good takedown defense. The difference is, Robert Whittaker's 31 years old, and people remember him as being one of the younger champions when he did secure the belt. He's 75 in MMA years, though, and I think that's something we all have to come to terms with at a certain point. Like, we've seen Whittaker get dropped by multiple fighters. He got knocked out by Wonderboy at 170. Of course, people are going to remember that. He got dropped by Yoel multiple times. He's been dropped by Adesanya multiple times.
Darren
Till, exactly. Like, at a certain point, I do worry about the durability of Robert Whittaker running out. Now, I think he's so much better at striking than Marvin Vettori in the open cage. It's not even funny, and that's really the key for Vettori in this matchup. I know I sound very pro-Vettori, so I guess I'll switch it around. Vettori has to get this fight up against the cage to have any success. He has good boxing, and it's been improving a lot as of late, but he doesn't throw many kicks. The ones that he do throw are very labored. He really has to load up on them. And the problem is, Robert Whittaker moves extremely well. So if you don't go for a lot of takedowns, if you don't throw a lot of leg kicks, he's going to be able to bounce around the cage and really have nothing to worry about coming back from Marvin Vettori if he can't get him up against the cage. Because in open space, Robert Whittaker has too good of a jab, too good of a right hand. He loves that head kick combination. But this is the other thing that we have to talk about. Robert Whittaker hasn't had a knockout in the UFC since 2017. He knocked out Derek Brunson. He knocked out Jacare. He has not had a stoppage victory since 5 years ago now. I don't think Robert Whittaker's a pillow-fisted fighter by any means. I'm just saying, Marvin Vettori has shown nothing but an exceptional chin throughout his UFC tenure, so I find it hard to believe that even though Robert Whittaker is the more technical striker, is the better striker, he's going to be able to go in there and just head kick Marvin Vettori and win.
No, and I mean, for Marvin Vettori, you look at that. Decent boxing combinations to bridge the gap, to get the clinch, to get the takedown, great top pressure, and he can keep that mindset and that pace for 5 rounds, let alone 3. And when you look at it for Vettori, he is the type of guy, if he throws a kick, there's a big reset. So on the half beat, if Whittaker can hit on those spots, that's exactly
and he's got wicked timing.
He will find his success. So we'll throw it on over to the community tab. We threw this one out there 4 hours ago, 583 votes. Co-main event UFC Paris, can't miss fight at welterweight. Who gets the win? 82% going with Robert Whittaker. Airdog saying, I don't see why Marvin is such a big underdog in this one. I think this should be a close fight. Phantom saying, I don't think Vettori has anything for him. He can't take him down. He's not really going to outpace him. And I also see him getting outstruck all night. Vettori is very tough, so I don't see him getting finished, but I do see him getting schooled, in my opinion. Bo says, I'm so confident in Whittaker that he'll probably lose. And Bill says, Whittaker has only lost to 1 guy, and it ain't Marvin Vettori. And my retort was 5 guys. Goodness, he lost to 10. A guy whose record's now 10, 13, and 2. Hun Kim at one point. So Whittaker does have losses, but of late, in the last 5 fights especially, the only 2 losses, the Adesanya finish loss at home, where he had that K-San walkout where you could have cried. Like, it was really emotional at Marvel Stadium. And then his last fight was to Adesanya, where it kind of seemed like, hey, got to pick up the pieces, don't know what's next, but of course it's a fight against the second-ranked guy in Vettori. So the odds here, Whittaker open minus 225, minus 242 right now. Vettori open a plus 188. He's a plus 193. What's the pick?
I have a really hard time with this fight, because I think if Marvin Vettori can make it boring, can use his clinch work, can go to the takedown, he can have a lot of success. The problem is, Robert Whittaker does move exceptionally well on his feet, so I do think it's going to be difficult for Vettori to really corner him in the cage and try to get a hold of him. So I was thinking I'd be picking Marvin Vettori, if I'm being completely honest, but the more I've thought about it, I do think Robert Whittaker can do enough on the in-betweens from some of the takedown attempts of Marvin Vettori to where he's going to be able to damage him, because that's the thing about Vettori. Even though he does have great cardio, even though he does have an exceptional chin, he gets stunned about once a fight, and it does make you kind of nervous. Like, even against Jack Hermanson was landing some really nice right hands by the end of that fight. Kevin Holland, same thing. He was starting to get to Vettori. And against Paulo Costa, I don't know how neither one of those guys got knocked down in that fight, because they were both landing some clean power power shots. I just think that since Vettori does leave some openings with his defense, Robert Whittaker should be able to take advantage of them. But if Vettori's ever going to beat Robert Whittaker, like storyline of their career-wise, it's definitely right now. It's Vettori. He's only suffered the one loss to the champion. With Whittaker, he's been in a lot of tough fights. He's been near the top of the division for a long time. Like, you can kind of see how the storyline's starting to unravel, but I am going to ever so slightly pick Robert Whittaker in what I hope is a fight of the night quality fight in our co-main event.
Love those odds on Marvin Vettori, and you talk about it. Great fight against Paulo Costa, pushing the pace, throwing with power, able to land. And if you do factor that in, I mean, the fights where he's starting to kind of get chipped away at, we're talking round 4, round 5.
Robert Whittaker also has all-time great cardio, so I just don't think it's going to matter those two last rounds no matter what.
No, and again, Whittaker striking on the hot beat. He's got a great opportunity in this fight, so it should be a great one. I have Marvin Vettori as the underdog in this matchup. I think he's going to push the pace. I think he's going to make it ugly, maybe a little bit boring, a la Marab. So I do actually have the Italian Dream as another one of my underdog picks on this card. We're split on this one, but it should be a great fight. When you have the first-ranked and second-ranked fighter in a division, you should end up with something great unless somebody breaks their leg or kicks each other in the cup or something crazy at the start.
Okay, but let's not put that mojo on him.
We'll forget about all of that. It should be a great one. Continue to fill up that comment section on this fight because it should be an all-timer in the co-main event and in the main event. Tuivasa just keeps winning.
He does.
And Ciryl Gane lost his last fight and got out-wrestled by Francis Ngannou in an all-time mind F. So it should be a great one in that main event. I can't wait for it. Make sure you check it out. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say,
let's get into it.